Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about Clara Schumann for my discussion about a female composer. So to give you a little bit of background and go over her life story, she was born Clara Josephine Weick. She is a German composer and musician, and she was eventually married to Robert Schumann, and obviously took on his name, who is also a composer, who we read about, I believe. She came from a split household, so her mother actually had an affair with one of her father's friends, and so when they split, she went and lived with her father, and her father was a musician and a teacher of music as well. So living with him, she did an hour of musical training every single day, and that ranged from learning violin and piano to music theory and composition. And so because her father was a teacher, he would have students who would come and actually live with them. And so that's where she met Robert Schumann. He was one of her father's students. So she met him there, and eventually they got married. And I might note that it was against the will of her father because her father didn't support that at all. So I found that to be pretty interesting. So they became very good friends with, and pardon how bad I'm about to butcher this name, but Joseph Joachim. I'm just going to refer to him as Joseph from here on out. So they became very good friends with Joseph, who was also a musician at the time, and he actually introduced Johannes Brahms to them. And the Schumanns really, really enjoyed Brahms and thought that he was brilliant. And this was very, very early on in Brahms' career, so they gave him very good reviews and really encouraged him to continue making music. And I mean, he's a pretty big composer now, so I think that was pretty cool. Fast forward to July of 1856, she actually lost her husband. He was committed to an insane asylum 2 years prior for attempting suicide. He just went crazy and actually ended up killing himself in July 1856. So after the death of her husband, she continued traveling and making music, and actually did this with Joseph. They traveled all over Europe to make music, which was also pretty cool, I think. And then one more interesting note, she was very critical of other composers, particularly Liszt and Wagner. The Wikipedia article talked about that a little bit, and she absolutely hated them and like wouldn't even go to a show with them playing, and I thought that was interesting. Okay, so as far as opportunities that she had a lot of musical opportunities just because of, she was trained fantastically. She was a child prodigy. She put on her first full concert at the age of 11. So knowing her father and then marrying a fellow musician, she was granted a lot of opportunities that way. So, and also later on meeting Joseph, that allowed her to travel all over Europe and do concerts. So she really had a lot of opportunities by her own personal skill level, but also by who she knew and grew up with. Excuse me. As far as barriers go, most of her barriers lied in her family life. As I mentioned earlier, her husband was committed to an insane asylum. So before that, he kind of got to a point where he was no longer bringing in support for the family. So Clara was actually single-handedly supporting a family of 10 total. So she had 8 kids. And then obviously her and Robert. So she supported the entire family financially and just in general. She did the duties of a housewife as well as, she was the breadwinner. And she did this by playing concerts. She was such a good musician that she played concerts enough to support the household. And, I mentioned that she lost her husband, and she also lost 4 of her children, one of them also to suicide. So, she had a lot of barriers within, at home, kind of holding her back, especially emotionally. But she still pushed through and made a lot of music that people who listen to classical music listen to today. Um, the reason that I chose Clara was because of her popularity. Honestly, she's known as one of the greatest pianists of her time. She did a lot with music, and I also, after reading the history, I found it really interesting that she dealt with mental health so much. I have an interest in mental health issues, and so I find it really interesting that she dealt with this and she didn't let it hold her back. And I think that she handled it pretty well for, especially for that time period. So yeah, that's why I chose her. I think she's pretty cool, and I thank you guys for watching.